Hi, good afternoon. I'm Anita Dunn. I am here in my personal capacity, which is the government version of saying that you stand by your ad. It's the disclaimer you have to put on these things, okay? But this really is very personal to me. 2 minutes to describe a lifetime of achievement for Bill Knapp. It's fitting because that's a challenge to any political ad maker, right? How do you distill the argument to 30 seconds, to a minute, to 2 minutes? And here's my shot. Okay, so Bill Knapp is both a brilliant strategist and a creative ad maker. Some call him intense and driven. For many, he's the smartest person in the room, and for others, he's the person with an unparalleled ability to cut to the central core of the message and press it relentlessly. Those of us who have worked with him also know he's the person who doesn't believe in meal breaks. So I'm actually surprised to see him eating, or that you've finished a shoot until you've had a 16-hour day, that scripts are often best written on the plane on the way to a location because you have a new idea that you've just decided needs to be a script, and that no race is ever over until you've produced sound for a sound truck on the Monday afternoon before the election. And whatever the name of the company over the years, the one constant has always been Bill and his obsessive dedication to winning for his clients. And it doesn't matter if it's a presidential campaign or a Bloomberg campaign or a local race where you already know the candidate isn't going to quite make it across the finish line. Everybody gets the same level of obsessive attention, of undistilled Bill Knapp brilliance, and that same drive to win. Bill made many memorable ads and worked on many memorable, even historic campaigns. However, Bill's true lifetime achievement is seen throughout this room and throughout the business. The number of people who worked with Bill over the years spread throughout this industry. Bill, that is a true lifetime achievement. It is a, yeah. I am very proud to be one of those people. So now, appropriately, let's run a film that Bill is certain to hate. Okay.
Over 40 years, the name has changed. But one person stayed the same. The first K, Bill Knapp.
Testing, 1, 2, 3. No photograph. I'd like to thank everyone who did a good job.
He's humble, hardworking, patient, a work ethic and consistency that fuels his success. He's the first one in, the last one out. Every morning he bikes to work, and every day he takes lunch at his desk. Over the last 40 years, Bill Knapp has elected more people to office than anyone can count, making some of the most memorable ads of all time.
Read my lips.
Remember, you will be better off 4 years from now than you are today.
Well, it's 4 years later. How you doing?
In 1996, Bill helped guide Clinton Gore to a midterm victory that seemed impossible after the '94 midterms.
You develop a strategy and then you execute it, and you're producing ads for the President of the United States. It's the best.
It is our responsibility to make that happen.
In 2001, after 9/11, Knapp guided Mike Bloomberg to City Hall in New York City, his hometown.
I'm Mike Bloomberg, and this is my life in 60 seconds.
One of the most incredible leaders I've ever worked for is Mike Bloomberg. And I think one of the most impactful ads I ever did for him was the ad post 9/11 in support of him and against smart greed.
And Bill worked with some clients for decades, like Congressman Earl Pomeroy, winning 9 consecutive at-large races in North Dakota.
Earl's just the world's greatest guy. It was always a red state, so it was always a tough race. And you always got to run a lot of ads, so it was a real proving ground and learning ground for me.
Bill Knapp's work alone is worthy of remembrance, but that's only part of his legacy. He led SKDK to become the most successful Democratic consulting firm in American history. Founded by Bob Squire, when Carter Eskew joined the firm, the first person he recommended they hire was Bill Knapp. 40 years later, SKDK has over 200 employees. Through elections and public affairs, their work impacts every person in our country, employing generations of folks like the Mirandas, both father and son, working with Bill since the beginning. Bill led the firm through up cycles and down, the good with the bad, like the loss of founder Bob Squire over 20 years ago.
You know, after Bob died, it wasn't clear the company was going to survive.
But they continued on in Bob's memory with Bill's leadership.
Squire always had this feeling, if you do good work, you'll do well. And I think that's the ethos of the company.
A testament to his humility, Bill Knapp will be the first to tell you he didn't do this alone.
I brought in a couple partners that I really trusted and that I empowered, that were smarter than me in so many ways. You know, there's an old saying, all life can be traced back to Brooklyn. A lot of political life can be traced back to SKDK. So I think the impact of the company over the years in sort of good people mentored here and going off and doing good, important things is really nice. At the end of the day, I'd like to be remembered as someone who mentored a bunch of people. I'd like to just have people think of me as a good person to work with, you know, who treats people well, is fair to people, respects people, is curious about things, and impart those values in the people I work with so they do the same as they move up in the industry.
My dad, first of all, my dad loved Bill Knapp. I just wanted to be here on behalf of myself, but also Bob Squire, say, congratulations, Bill.
He is probably the most modest person that exists in a business that is extraordinarily ego-driven. So I imagine he's sort of wanting to slink under the table by now in tonight's proceedings. But Bill, you earned it, you deserve it, and whether you like it or not, we're going to honor you.
I've never met a more decent man than Bill Knapp. He is brilliant, works ferociously hard, treats everyone with wonderful respect. And for the poor candidate that's the end of one of these film shoots, he keeps it all fun, even in the darkest hours.
Bill Knapp is a great friend and a great gentleman. One of the most astute and sophisticated political analysts and advisors I've ever met.
Bill is one of a kind. It's very unusual to find somebody who's modest, but very smart, very capable, a master at the craft of being a political consultant. And yet he doesn't walk around with a swagger.
You know, Bill is stuck with this business of politics for a long time, so he can act like he's, above it all and cynical, but when everything's said and done, he's a true believer.
He's an incredible person and an incredibly talented person, and somebody I know I would not be in Congress without.
Bill, seriously, nobody deserves this Lifetime Achievement Award more than you. You're the best in the business. I wouldn't have been mayor for 3 times without you. And everything we're able to accomplish in City Hall, well, you helped make it possible. Congratulations and all the best.
Strategic, insightful, creative, and most importantly, an all-around great guy. Once again, congratulations.
Congrats, Bill.
Congratulations, Bill.
Congrats, Bill.
Congrats.
Congrats, Bill.
Congrats, Bill.
Congratulations, Bill.
Congrats, Bill.
Congrats, Bill.
Congratulations on this honor.
Congrats, Bill.
From your friends, colleagues, and family at SKDK, welcome to the Hall of Fame.
That was better than my bat mitzvah video. So I just want to say congratulations to everyone who won an award. And Whit, watching your video was painful because I've lost to many of your clients, but congratulations nonetheless. And Celinda, our office used to be right next to, we shared a wall with Greenberg Lake. And when we had primaries against each other, they would go home at night and we'd go through their garbage. So thank you. When you live a professional life that is defined in election cycles, do we realize how weird that is, by the way? You develop a hodgepodge of memories anchored around them. So what I want to share with you is some hodgepodge memories. I remember shooting an ad in Minot, North Dakota, freezing my ass off. It was $15 a point, and we had a lot of freezing to do. Doing it for Earl was a joy. He didn't know what it meant, being from North Dakota, but he was and is a mensch. I remember President Clinton telling me, I would say to President Clinton, one more take, and he'd stop and look at me. He said, "You said that 3 takes ago." I remember our film editor, yes, film. There's a separate breakout session on film later if you want to attend. I remember him teaching me there were 24 frames a second and all about God. He was born again. I remained a Jew. I became a press secretary in my second political job, knowing nothing about how to do it. I remember calling up Carter Eskew, who I worked with in a previous campaign, so he could teach me where to put the for immediate release. It was Carter who I met in the Holtzman campaign. When she was running for the Senate, he hired me in Squires, and he's been a rabbi for me ever since, even with a name like Eskew. I remember David Cameron, wondering why your, quote, president wants this Iran deal so badly, end quote, and showing me Winston Churchill's brandy glass at Chequers. I shared with him a speech that he asked me to write, and I was really proud of it at the end. It quoted from Shakespeare. And he said, "You know, that's so American," and he killed it. I remember being the office manager and volunteer coordinator for Liz Holtzman in her Senate race in 1980. For me, it all began with Liz, a person I still admire for her smarts, tenacity, integrity, and leadership. Liz, thank you so much for the opportunity and your trust and your friendship. You are a leader and a feminist leader before it was cool. And thank you so much. Oh, I have a story about Liz's campaign. So one of the things I did, I was a volunteer coordinator, and there was this young woman who came in to volunteer, and she went to Harvard, and she was at Harvard Law School, and she said she's going to graduate and finish Harvard Law School, and she was going to be a Supreme Court justice. And I said, sure, Elena Kagan. If anyone has a federal indictment, let me know. I know someone. I remember the Quip machine, landlines, fax machines, flip phones, the BlackBerry, the phone book, the Selectric typewriters. I remember videotapes, FedEx runs, wrong disclaimers, faulty Oppo. For Congressman John Olver from Western Mass, we had an Oppo book on someone with the same last name as my opponent. That guy, he didn't pay his taxes. Unfortunately, it wasn't our opponent, so I learned a good lesson. As Reagan says, trust but verify. I remember being in the boiler room when the Nets called Florida for Gore. We won. Holy cow. I remember being there when the Nets retracted it. I said, is that legal? Apparently it is. I remember Senator Landrieu's campaign. I almost died in that campaign. In New Orleans, I'm allergic to shellfish, jazz, and having fun. I remember 2 clients who went to jail, Joe Ganim of Bridgeport, Connecticut, and Rod Blagojevich of Illinois. The company is now working against one presidential candidate who might join them. Sorry, partisan. I remember the company winning with Democrats in the South when it was tough. Dick Shelby, Bob Graham, Hal Heflin, David Pryor, Dale Bumpers, Terry Sanford, Jim Hood, Evan Bayh. He makes the cut because of Southern Illinois. And Tom Swazi, you got the South Shore of Long Island. Speaking of the South, I remember filming a rocking chair ad in North Carolina. It was a very effective ad against Liddy Dole. And we were there by the side of the road. This guy pulls up in a pickup truck. He lowers his window. He said, now, you guys, you're not from here, are you? And I said, no, sir, we're not. He said, well, if I bet I'd finish that shoot and get out of here real quick. So we did. I remember filming Jay Rockefeller at his estate in West Virginia and looking in the eyepiece and then looking up at him and say, it's perfect, you look like $1 million. He goes. I remember filming Mike Bloomberg on a bench in East Harlem for a long shot mayor's race. To do his race in the city where I grew up, the only city that really counts, the only city with real museums, real restaurants, a real subway system, a real newspaper, the New York Post. Is my bias showing? Well, seeing how he governed and working for him was really the honor of a lifetime. And I remember when he left office, I did a video and they showed it as going away at Gracie Mansion. And of course, I'm sitting in the back, seeing if people are enjoying the video. It's a large crowd. And one of the segments is cut to a Beatles song. And I look to my right, and right next to me is Paul McCartney. And I turned to him and I said, I did that video, you don't mind? He said, no, it's fine. I was stupid enough to not get his autograph. My kids and coworkers don't let me tell old-time stories, so the bad news for you kids is I'm up here and you're down there, and I'm only halfway done. I remember things that touched my heart, filming Joe Biden and his 2 little boys at Kate Henlopen. Who could have predicted the future? I remember filming James Brady for a Clinton ad. I remember filming a daughter whose mother was abused, a gun victim survivor, a coal miner who lost benefits. I remember for Earl Pomeroy talking to a war hero who survived the Battle of Iwo Jima and the tears in his eyes decades later. I remember filming Evan Bayh's wife, so resolute, so loving, so Hoosier, just like Evan. Now, this I remember. I remember when Anita told me she was leaving to work for Bradley for president. I wished her luck. I remember when she told me she was leaving to work for Joe Biden. I said, are you kidding? Well, she wasn't, and she won. And looking ahead, I'm sure I'll remember when she leaves again to work for, wouldn't you like to know? Here's something I don't remember, all the obscure bands that Howard Wolfson knows about. But I do remember the countless meetings with Howard Wolfson, Kevin Sheekey, Patty Harris, and Doug Schoen. Doug, you introduced me to the Bloomberg gang. For that, I owe you 300 million thank yous. I remember time with Tom Swazi. Knapp, you Jewish? Yes, sir, I am. Where's your family from? Eastern Europe. No. What part of the Pale of Settlement? I love ethnic politics in New York, almost as much as Tom does. I remember Attorney General Doug Gansler. His raw optimism and his desire to make a difference was inspiring. His love for that ugly Maryland flag, inexplicable. I remember Obama practicing his keynote address in the bowels of the Kerry Convention Hall in Boston. I was helping him run the practice room. And thought, holy cow, who picked this guy? He's a complete dud. I predicted Taylor Swift was a one-song wonder. I remember trying to edit Jimmy Carter's speech so he didn't start an intifada on the convention floor. That was fun. I remember having my daughter Samantha in a Gore ad. Bob Shrum tried to kill the shot, saying she looked too rich. But my friend and colleague Marius Pesner, who's here, he was an editor, so Shrum never stood a chance. I remember the Clinton convention in Chicago. My wife Jean was there. She was pregnant with Sam, my oldest daughter. We stayed at a secure floor, and the Secret Service room, delivery after delivery of room service. And the Secret Service, well, who is this woman? How could she possibly be eating so much? Answer, she's pregnant. I remember putting my son Brian in an ad. He had to play a convicted felon in a wheelchair. He asked me, Dad, what's my motivation? I said, tuition. I use my youngest, Allie, for a focus group for my ads. Let's just say I get a lot of rotten tomatoes, but they're always delivered with love. No, that's a typo, with a kick in the ass. I remember family vacations, walking through the Vatican, Montmartre, Mexico City, Milan, on conference calls, and thankful to have an incredible, supportive, and patient wife, joyful kids that educate me every day on political correctness, and I'm learning, and all 4 of them keeping me anchored in what really matters most, the cost per point in New York. I remember my siblings, Richard, who's here, and Liz, who lives in Boulder, and my sister-in-law, Susan. They put up with me with the following sentence from me year after year. I'm sure you have used this in your own life. I swear after the election I'll call you back. This, Dick, is a blanket apology. Finally, 3 big things I'd like to share with you. 1, I remember all the people along the way who taught me, some with patience, some with humor, some because they were annoyed with me, but I learned from all of them and I still learn from them. Do you know there's something called the World Wide Web? I've heard about it. Our creative director, Matt Harris, keeps trying to teach me a 60-second ad isn't a 30-second ad isn't a 60-second ad read more quickly. I cherished and learned from my old partners. Josh, I say, built SKD, and I was smart enough to get out of his way. Thank you, Josh. And Doug and my new partners, I learn from them every day. 2, I remember the politicians I worked for. You know, we're the only industry in the world that attacks itself so relentlessly. Coke doesn't attack sugar, Ford doesn't attack driving. So yeah, the brand is battered, but I've seen hardworking clients committed to public service. My friend Tom Friedman always says the best day of a government job is the first day because it's so hard, and it is hard, and it's hard because it's noble. I worry through the years I've debased it some, but while I can sometimes talk like a cynical New Yorker, I try not to behave like one. Finally, I'll always remember and admire Bob Squire. He was a mentor and a friend. It's so great to have Mark, his son, here. Thank you for your comments in the video, Mark. If Bob were here, he'd be proud, don't you think? And also, there'd be wine at every table. Bob always said to me, Bob always said about me, Bill, you always see the dark at the end of the tunnel. Well, hell, someone has to be anchored in reality. My favorite line in the Disney movie Inside Out is when joy and pessimism are lost in a maze, and pessimism says we're lost forever, and joy says, can't you be positive? And pessimism, I'm positive we're lost forever. Well, I don't think we're doomed as a country, but these aren't easy times. And here's the wisdom of Squire, and this is where his wisdom comes through after all these years. Don't let AI and micro-targeting and geofencing and A/B testing and impressions, don't start with me on impressions, SEO, SEM, segmented, and all the other innovations, don't let that have you forget, in the end, it's the human connection that counts. That's what I remember from Bob Squire. David Mamet says of directing, let a brick be a brick. Let a candidate be a person. Capture something real. As the philosopher Hillel said, the rest is commentary. Anita, thank you so much for that kind introduction. Thank you, Karen and Andrew and Damon and everyone else who malpracticed clients while working on the video and making the invites happen. And thank you, AAPC, for this honor. I'm not sure I earned it, but I know the people who I've worked with over 4 decades certainly have. Thank you.